What's up, everybody? It's Coach Dave, and I lift.
And Laura and I lift. Welcome to the She Lifts.
He Lifts podcast. And tonight we are going to continue with our journey, as always, on sustainable fitness for real life. And by talking about our nutrition. And I feel like this is a hot topic for a lot of people because I feel like a lot of people overcomplicate this issue. Or not
Yeah.
issue is probably the wrong word, but people overcomplicate it. Um, One thing I will say about nutrition is the most important part of our fitness journey because no matter what your goal is, whether it's to get bigger, smaller, leaner, stronger, faster, or wherever you want to go, you all starts with nutrition. I have mentioned before I have had my own fitness journey where I was 270 pounds and I went from 270 to 195 with very little exercise, strictly on nutrition. Now, I didn't love the way I looked, but I did lose the weight. So, Laura, I'm going to let you go ahead and get this one started.
But we wanted to start off with a little bit of a disclaimer. As always, if you have any sort of medical condition, metabolic disorder, diabetes, high blood pressure, whatever, if you're not a healthy individual, please consult your doctor before you make any significant nutrition or exercise changes. This is not a meal plan. This is not medical advice. I can't speak for Dave, but I am not nutrition certified. I do, however, have 4 years of experience helping people adjust their nutrition. So while I am not nutrition certified, I don't know if Dave is or not. Are you?
I am.
Okay, cool. Look at that. Dave is. But I am not. So I do have 4 years of experience. Dave is nutrition certified and has 3 years of experience coaching people through nutrition changes. We also want to make sure that you have a healthy relationship, not only with food. The focus on this episode is going to be your relationship with food, but also exercise before you start making any nutritional changes. So if you adjust or if you take a step back and look at your food habits, your nutrition habits from the outside, just some things to watch out for. Like if you are a stress eater, if you are a binge eater, if you feel like you have like un, I don't even know what the word for it. Like if you cannot control your cravings, you may not necessarily have the healthiest relationship with food. And this episode is not going to benefit you a ton if you don't already have a good relationship with food. We can't help you with that because we are not mental health professionals. So I would highly suggest getting some getting a mental health professional to help you work through that relationship with food. And then once you feel like you are in a comfortable place to start making nutritional changes, then you can go ahead and take the advice from this podcast. So, step one would be to ensure that you have a healthy relationship with food. And we want to start that off by keeping our verbiage positive.
Yeah, and what that is one of the big things. It was verbiage. The verbiage when it comes to nutrition is super important because I think we put a lot of stress on words now. I am a very realistic person. And I am not. I am one of those people that will say, I call a spade a spade. However, my big thing when it comes to nutrition is there is the word diet, and I don't like the word diet because diet to me implies temporary. Anytime you hear the word diet, you think of something short term or at least not sustainable for the rest of your life, even it is a longer term. Second thing is that word long term and short term, those are relative terms. Long term for some people is a year, and I'm not talking about what can you sustain for a year or 2 years or even 3 or 4 years. I'm talking about what you can sustain from this day until the day you're 102 years old. How long can you sustain the nutrition protocol or the nutrition plan that you are on now? The other word that I hate when people say to me is this good for me? Is this bad for me? Nothing is good for you. Nothing is bad for you. It's food. Okay, let me rephrase that. There are certain things that are bad for you. Smoking is bad for you. Okay. Soda in excess is bad for you, but even having one glass of soda isn't the end of the world. when it comes to food, it's what gets me closer to my goals and what doesn't. Because even things that are healthy in the wrong phase of your training or the wrong phase of your journey can put you further away from your goals. So stop looking at things are good and bad. Is what is going to be the best for you. Um, and the other part of this is w- it has to be our mindset and our focus, and it's got to be on what we are doing, not just on what we're doing now for the short term, but how can we make this into a long-term journey? Wouldn't you agree, Laura?
Oh yeah, 100%. I always tell my clients, like, I am the same way. I tell my clients there is not good food, there's not bad food. There's food that gives you nutrition, and then there's food that may fill a different aspect of your life. So like it may fill your social cup, it may fill your emotional cup. It may not necessarily balance out your nutrition, but we eat those foods for other reasons. And again, going back to that positive, healthy relationship with food, if you're eating that food due to stress or emotional eating or whatever, that's not necessarily a good motive behind that food. But if you're at like a holiday gathering and Aunt so and so brought her mac and cheese that you love, and you want to enjoy that because it is part of your family gathering, that's a completely different aspect of your nutrition. So there are social foods and nutritional foods. So that's how I usually break it down for my clients. Another thing that I like to do to keep the verbiage positive is I tell my clients to add things in instead of thinking about taking things away. So I always have my clients make sure we're adding in protein and we're adding in water. When we add in our protein, we're going to feel fuller longer. We're going to feel more satiated. We're going to hit those protein goals, which we've talked about in a couple episodes. We want to make sure that we're building muscle. When we add in that water, the pursuit of adding in that water, we're going to naturally eliminate some of those sodas like Dave talked about, or I don't know, like some coffees that I see people drink. It's like really not coffee, it's basically like ice cream in a cup. So we are naturally removing things without even putting a negative connotation on it at all when we focus on adding things in. Um, Another thing that I kind of see people do with nutrition is they go like all or nothing. And I see that word kind of thrown around a lot. And I was listening to one of my favorite fitness podcasts. I'm not even going to take credit for this. It's Mind Pump. It's like my favorite thing to listen to. But I was listening to them earlier today, and I wanted to talk about it because I love this. Like all in is relative to you. So where you might see somebody all in is like they are 100% on their nutrition, they're 100% on their workout. I would say that is like commonly what we think of when we think of all in. But if you are in a space where you being all in, like from our first episode, we talked about maybe you're going to go on a 10-minute walk every day, and that's all that you have mental and physical and schedule to do, that might be all in for you in your phase of life. So when you're thinking about what changes you want to make, you also have to take a look at your lifestyle so that you're not setting yourself up for failure.
Absolutely. And I think that goes back to what we said. We it was one of the very first things we ever talked about on this podcast is we said what workout works best for you. It's the one that you're going to do. And I feel like the same thing can be applied to nutrition. What meal plan or what style of eating or what foods are the ones are the best for you are the ones that you're going to be able to eat that are going to get you closest to your goal. So whatever that is what's going to be best for you. Yes, there are certain things that are healthier than others, and some things we know. Some things are the obvious choices. Um, we know about the cookies and the candy and the soda, those processed sugars and those highly processed carbs. We know about the fried foods and the higher saturated fats foods. We know those things, okay? But there's also other things that sort of go into what is going to work for us and what isn't. Some of it, especially when it comes to nutrition, and I'm going to say this even more so than working out, is there's a lot more of personal taste that goes into nutrition than there does into exercise. Exercise, yes, there are exercises we should be doing. You know, we should all be bench pressing. We should all be squatting in some way, shape, or form. There are a lot of little things too, and I'll get into this later on in the episode that add up that you may or may not like when it comes to nutrition. Um, Making sure we're getting to our protein goals, and I don't care what kind of foods you are eating. Um, I know, Laura, we and I have talked about this when we were actually planning this episode. Laura is actually a vegetarian. She is so. As a matter of fact, I want you to talk about that because I don't think a lot of people understand what that is and what goes along with that, especially when it comes to getting your protein.
Yeah, so I have been, think I think it was 2018. My husband, so fun fact, my husband was the one that wanted to go vegan. And I was like, oh, absolutely not. Like, I'm not doing that. And he was like, no, like, I really want to try it. And like, we should do it together. And I was like, okay, fine, whatever. Like, we'll do it. So we did it. We were vegan for a long time. I think I was vegan until 2020 when I got pregnant with my son. I was vegan for 2 years. My husband ended up not consuming enough protein or calories. So he ended up losing a bunch of weight and he didn't like it. So it was my husband's idea, but he's been eating meat. He probably, I think he only lasted like 6 months. But here I am, still vegetarian, even though I didn't even want to do it in the first place. When I got pregnant with my son, I was doing, just in case you're wondering why I'm not vegan anymore, I was doing some research and it turned out that vegan kids or kids whose moms were vegan when they were pregnant, statistically, they were smaller. So they were like skinnier and shorter, had less like muscle tone. And I personally didn't want to risk like my dietary restrictions on my unborn child. So now I'm vegetarian. So I do eat a little bit of dairy. I don't really eat meat just because I just personally don't like it. But veganism and vegetarianism is something that I see people, and this kind of leads into our next little bullet point here. It's a little bit of like a trendy thing to do. So when you are making your nutritional choices, you need to make sure that it aligns with your values. So if you're only choosing to be vegetarian or vegan because it's trendy, or you think it's healthy, or you think you're going to lose a whole bunch of weight if you only eat plants, you don't have the right motives behind that nutritional change. You're only doing it as like a short-term solution because we want to take the measures. This is like something that I say a lot, and I'm sure I've talked about it on the podcast before, but I can't remember. You want to focus on your health first. And when you focus on your health, the results will follow. If you're only going vegan or vegetarian because you think it's going to give you physical results, it's not going to give you long-term results. So if you're not going vegan or vegetarian for the animals, you're not going to stick to it because it just doesn't align with your values, your life values. So that's one thing I will say about being vegetarian or vegan. Don't do it for the weight loss or whatever you think is going to happen. It is a little bit more difficult to hit your protein on a plant-based diet. And I will say there is a lot of a learning curve that goes with it. So a lot of times, very common fit nutritional advice will be, and we've talked about this a lot too, like eat high protein, maybe moderate your carbs and your fats a little bit more. We are throwing that like plant-based, throw it all out the window. You need to hit your protein goal, however you need to get it done. I eat a lot more carbs ever since I transitioned to plant-based nutrition because a lot of those carbs have protein in it. So a lot of my stuff I get from tofu. I do like some processed meat substitutes. I don't necessarily love processed foods, but with a vegan and vegetarian diet, you have to pick your poison on that one. I do a lot of beans, a lot of lentils, and beans and lentils. Yes, they have protein in them, but when you look at the nutritional value, they have more carbs than they do protein. So if I want to hit my protein goal, I need to consume a little bit more carbs. With that being said, that shouldn't like scare you because if you're eating whole foods, your carbs don't. they do matter a little bit. So I don't want to say that they don't matter, but if you're eating whole foods and you're hitting your protein goals, don't be super concerned about being low carb, because when we eat whole foods, we get more nutritional value. We get our vitamins, we get our iron, our potassium, all from those plant-based carb sources. So a lot of things that we hear that we're going to talk about today, when you are plant-based, you do kind of have to veer from these results a little bit more. And I'm sure in more podcasts, I will get more in depth on vegan nutrition. I will get a little bit more in depth down here in a couple more bullet points here. One other thing I wanted to say about sustainable nutrition is like sometimes baby steps will get you closer to the long-term results. Actually not sometimes, I would say most of the time. Going back to kind of like that all in is whatever you can do with your life right now. So on our very first episode, again, I threw out an analogy. If I had a client and they drank 10 sodas a day, I would not want them to go from 10 sodas to zero, because their cravings and their behavior, that is such a drastic change. So don't be afraid to take baby steps. I know everybody gets so caught up in the results, but it is a long process. It's sustainable. We're talking about real life. We're not talking about short-term results. There is, however, like we do want to focus on the long term, but sometimes we do have short-term results, and there are ways that people there are misconceptions about the ways that we can hit those long-term results and the measures that we take to get there.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things like you talked about is sort of the baby steps. I like to refer to it as progression. And it's just like again, we focus back in on some of the other things we talked about when it comes to lifting weights. You wouldn't have a client barbell squat who on the first day who can't, who can barely stand up off the couch, right? Same thing with nutrition. If you are eating a very processed, a very high sugar, high fat diet, going right into chicken, rice, and broccoli, and I know I say that a lot, but again, that's sort of the quote unquote fitness diet. But if going right into that from eating into someone who's eating fast food, 2 or 3 times a week, and eating processed carbs a lot, and eating foods out of boxes and things like that, is setting you up for failure. And I sort of this is one of my favorite fitness podcasters and fitness influencers talked about when he was younger, would eat breakfast with donuts and uh, you know, bacon and eggs, and he would eat donuts a lot, and he would eat uh, Apple Jacks, and then he said, "Oh, Cheerios are better than Apple Jacks, but Cheerios are still very highly processed, even though they're slightly worse than Apple Jacks, but whatever." So he read somewhere that bodybuilders were eating oatmeal. Well, if you eat oatmeal, if you go right from eating sugary cereals like Apple Jacks or Fruit Loops or Frosted Flakes into eating oatmeal right out of the canister of oatmeal, it's a huge change. The progression from there, from eating that, was to throw some protein on his breakfast. Then from there, we'll cut out the cereal completely and we'll go to the oatmeal that's in the packet. Yes, it has more sugar than the oatmeal that's in the tube, but it's still less sugar that's in those Fruit Loops. There's a progression. And one of the things that we talk about in that progression is making sure that we're going to get closer and closer to our goals. I think that's where a lot of times fad diets fall off. And I think one of the, Laura, you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said this. Veganism, veganism particularly, vegetarians have been around for a long time, going back for many, many years. Because people don't like meat. People are do have moral restrictions when it comes to animals and things like that. So there are veg vegetarians out there, but veganism has become sort of a trendy thing. And there are other fad diets. We talk about keto. We talk about all these low carb diets. Atkins was a thing when I was younger. And I'm not gonna lie. Again, I started on nutrition. I started on a fad diet at the time called the South Beach diet, which got me results right off the bat, and I'm not gonna lie, and but it helped me, and I progressed from there too, and that's where I think the misconception about fad diets comes into play. Fad diets do serve a purpose to me. They can, if that's what's going to get you started, maybe it won't be your nutrition forever, but at least get you started. I'm all for it. Um, I just came off of a cycle where I was for about 3.5 weeks on a very carb restricted diet because I had a certain goal. I used it as a short-term solution, not a lifestyle change, but it was a short-term solution to help get my weight down so I could make weight to compete in my jiu-jitsu tournament. Those things can have a positive impact on your fitness. And I think certain ones, if we pick and choose when to use them in the right time, they can also get you if you're stuck in a rut. If your goal is to lose weight and you're stuck in a rut, and all of a sudden you've lost weight, lost weight, and now you need to get through a plateau. I think you can do that too. And I know keto is the one that's sort of at the forefront. It is not my favorite. Um, Although I do have heard some positive things about it, it is not my favorite because one of the things I don't like about it personally is that it requires a lot of macro tracking. So, in my opinion, that if you're just starting out, that is something that isn't the most sustainable thing.
Oh yeah, totally am. I completely agree. Like I think fad diets get like a bad rap. As long as you are going into this fad diet knowing that this is not a long-term solution, and even sometimes too, just to give you a little bit of a realistic expectation, if you have a certain short-term result or short-term goal and you want to lose a little bit of weight and you resort to some type of fad diet to get there, just to be realistic, you may gain all that weight back that you lost when you get back to your regular nutrition. So while it will probably give you a jump start, if you're a beginner and you want to use that to kick it off, if you are a little bit more advanced using those fad diets, you probably won't sustain those results. That being said, I do take short term. Like if I'm going to the beach, when I was getting ready for my wedding, I definitely did go like super low carb because I had a short term goal that I wanted to hit. Like I want to look good for certain things. And I have physical goals too. I know that that's not a long-term solution, but it's okay to do that sometimes if you know the expectation. And I completely agree. I'm personally not a fan of keto. Like how Dave said, it does require a lot of tracking. A really common thing I see with keto is people treat it like a I want to say people treat it like a diet, and it's not a diet. Keto is like a lifestyle change. You can't have cheat days when you're in keto because it takes you out of ketosis. It takes about a week to get into ketosis, which is where the word keto comes from. When you're in ketosis, your body uses fat as energy. So you can't have a cheat day where you eat pizza every Friday because by the time Friday rolls around again and you eat your pizza again, you never even got into ketosis during the week anyway because it takes a couple days to get into that state. And I think a lot of times people do use it as like, oh, I'm going to be keto through the week, but then I'm going to have my cheat day. My one thing I will say about fat, like how Dave said, fat diets do have their purpose, not only for our short-term results, but there have been studies. I have personally never done keto, so I can't speak from experience, but I have heard that keto gives you mental clarity benefits. So it is like a little bit of like a brain defog. You kind of come out of that when you're in ketosis. So if you have something where you know you're going to need to be like super sharp and on it, maybe you have like a huge presentation or whatever, and you know I need to be on it, maybe you're going to try a little keto block for a month or two, just so when that event comes and you need to be on it, you have that mental clarity to tackle that, whatever that is. So don't be afraid to try them and see what you like and what you don't. So like when I first started working out, I ate This is really, sometimes when I think about what I used to do, it like honestly embarrasses me and I wish I could go back and help like past me. I really actually don't
Same,
want to
girl,
admit this, but
same.
I would eat 100 grams of carbs a day. That was it. If I went over 100 grams of carbs, I got stressed to the max. I was not like, I know my brain was not functioning properly. I had zero strength. Looking back on it, I would eat rotisserie chicken as a snack. Like, bitch, that's not a snack. Like, what were you doing? So don't be afraid to try them out. So I did say that that was embarrassing, but now I know that low carb doesn't work for me. So you can experiment knowing that these are short-term results and then take pieces from your results. You're kind of like doing experiments on yourself, and then take pieces from your results to adjust to your goals.
It's funny you say that about the carbs because I post COVID I had gained some weight and I went into a little bit of a keto block when like quarantine when the gyms first reopened. And I really didn't know a whole lot about it at the time. So I, like everybody else, I went on social media and I joined a couple of keto groups. So one day someone was saying, "Oh my God, I went over my carbs because I put too much broccoli in my dinner." And I'm like, dude, like who has ever uttered the
Oh
phrase, "Oh
my
my God, I ate
gosh.
too much"? Who I ate too much broccoli. The broccoli is the thing. And my one of the things I always talk about when it comes to nutrition, and I say this kind of as a joke, but I think it's one of those jokes that has some reality to it. And when I say it, people it sort of makes people think is that whatever that food is, whether it's broccoli, carrots, bananas, um, sugary fruits like that, no one's ever looked at a fat guy and said he eats too much broccoli or too many carrots or too many bananas, those things, and that's where one of the things I think all carbs are not created equal. And I think because of the attention that low carb diets get, and because, like we said, in the short term, they can deliver results, and especially if you are using that as a plateau plateau breaker or a short term solution, like Laura did for her wedding, I did for my competition, they can that can benefit you. You just have to know what the right carb, the rest of the time, know what the right carbs are. And there are certain carbs I think that get bad raps. Um, and that's where I think, again, just like I said, again, I'm likening a lot of this back to the strength training. We train for our goals, we have to eat for our goals. So if our goals include some sort of athletic performance that involves endurance, um, or running or something like that, carbs become a necessary part of that. I think if we're learning to build muscle, again, we need carbs to build muscle. We need carbs to ignite that protein, turn that protein into muscle. The formula to build muscle is water, energy, and protein. We know about the protein. Water, obviously, that energy comes from carbs. I always talk about in old monster movies from like the 50s. They took a glob of protein, put it in a giant beaker, and zapped it with electricity, and boom, Frankenstein was created. If you think of your muscles in the same way, that's how that works. And I think we have to make sure that we are eating for our goals. We are fueling ourselves with the right calories. Now, the one caveat I will say to calories, and this is one of the things that when I have new clients and they ask me this is question. This is one question I know that they are setting themselves up for failure when they ask me is, and Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, how many calories do I need to eat?
Yeah.
Right? Because the mentality is as long as I'm within my calories, I'm going to lose weight or I'm going to gain weight or whatever my goal is. The problem is not all calories are created equal. If I'm putting things like Swedish fish, ice cream, trying to think of some other things. High amounts of cheese, high amounts of sugary processed carbs, and nothing that there's anything wrong with that. Again, guys, like I said, there's not foods that are good and foods that are bad, but there are things that are going to get you closer to your goals. And if you're occupying your daily calories with Swedish fish and ice cream and cheeseburgers from McDonald's, guess what? You're those are calories that could be taken up by something that's going to be more healthy and more satiating. And that's where I think we need to make sure that we're cutting out the shit calories. One of the things I like to do when it comes to my plates is I what's called eating like a clock. So if you can visualize your plate, and again, this is not something that I came up with. This is something I pieced together from different people that I've learned from. But if you can visualize your plate like a clock, at 12 at the bottom, six, or 12 at the top, six at the bottom, three and nine on each side, you draw a line to 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock. The portion of the plate from 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock, that is your starchy carbs, that is your rice, that is your potatoes, that is your pasta, that is anything breads, anything like that goes in there. The portion from 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock, which is the second smallest portion, that is your vegetables. The largest portion, the portion from 7 to 12, that is your protein. The size of your plate, the diameter, or the height of your plate depends on your caloric needs. And I think if we focus on that, that generally, for most people, especially people who are starting out, that will put you in the right amount of calories. Once we start seeing results, then it's time to fine tune and how many calories and start tracking our macros and doing things like that. But at the beginning, tracking macros, tracking calories, one of two things. Either you're setting yourself up for failure because you're going to be so obsessed with it that you're going to start eating too much broccoli, or you're setting yourself up for failure because you know that, oh, I can still include my Reese's or my pick your food here.
Yeah, 100%. I love the eat like a clock for beginners, because just like Dave said, when you start tracking, it does start to get obsessive. I have a tendency to get obsessed with my macros. I definitely, there are usually two types of people fitness journey, and then there are obviously people in the middle. Two extremes would be somebody who is like obsessed, loves data, wants to optimize like every possible thing that they can. And then there's people who don't really care and they're more in the like, I just want to hit my calories and I'm doing this because I know that I need to get healthier, but I really have no interest in it. I am definitely closer to the obsessive side. So I know for myself, if I track my calories, I'm going to start to get like really stressed out. Like I would when I do track my macros, sometimes my son, he's 3, he'll be eating like goldfish or something and he'll feed some to me. And my like obsessive brain, I'm like, oh shit, this is like, okay, I'm up to like 10 goldfish now. So now I should like probably start tracking it. Like that is not a healthy relationship with tracking your calories, which is why I've talked about before. That's why I'm in a phase where I don't really have physical goals because that's not good for my mental health. So we need to balance our physical and mental health. I actually used to have a client. She was one of my very first clients ever, and I completely forgot about this until I started talking. But she would only eat lean cuisines, and I was okay with that because she told me that when she meal preps, it stresses her out and it throws her mental health like out the window. Like it takes a spike when she thinks about meal prepping. Would I ever suggest any of my clients to eat processed freezer meals? Absolutely not. But she had to balance her physical and mental health so that we could find a good compromise where she was still going to be eating relatively healthier than she was, but it would also complement her goals. So if you're in a phase where you know that you can't track, you can't meal prep, focus on eating like a clock. Once you get that clock down and you feel like, okay, my relationship with food is healthy, I feel like I got this. The first thing I ever have my clients track if they're in a phase where like they don't want to track is your protein. I've talked about it before, so I'm not going to talk about it a whole lot, but when you focus on your protein goal, you will naturally eliminate and regulate the correct amount of carbs and fats and vitamins and minerals and whatever, all of that stuff just by hitting your protein goal. So once you are ready to take a step out of that clock phase, we're only going to focus on protein and everything else will kind of naturally regulate. And that is another time where if that is all in for you or not, if you're not mentally ready for that yet, that's okay because that's what eating like a clock is for. We did want to go over our current nutrition. Again, this is not a meal plan. This is not like a recommendation, but we did want to give everybody an idea of what we typically eat, especially because we have different goals and different lifestyles. And I'm vegan or I'm vegetarian and Dave isn't. So a I'm a repeat eater. Once I find something that works, I don't I don't really eat for taste. Yes, I want my foods to taste good, but I'm not out here like craving like I'm just gonna say McDonald's cheeseburgers because Dave talks about it a lot, so it's on top of my head. I don't crave those. I never have. My parents never took me to McDonald's, so that's not anything that's like in my needs or wants. So I find something that I like and that fits. I've tracked my protein and my nutrition so many times that I'm now kind of like an intuitive eater because I know what 6 ounces of tofu looks like. So I might have 6 ounces of tofu. I can spoon out pretty close to a cup of rice if I need to. And then my vegetables, I just go from there. So I have a tendency, I eat the same thing for breakfast every day. It's either some oatmeal with protein powder in it and peanut butter and a banana on top, or I'll do like a protein mug cake. So it's a weird recipe, but I'll probably post it at some point on our social media just since now I'm talking about it. But it's a very odd recipe. But I'll either eat oatmeal or that. Lunch, again, I usually have some form of tofu, either some kind of processed meat substitute, rice typically. Sometimes I'll have beans or lentils. I really like lentils for protein, just to up it a little bit more. When I'm trying to cut or when I'm trying to lose extra body fat, I love potatoes. So like kind of going back to what Dave talked about before, potatoes I feel like are a carb that gets like a bad rap because we think about like potato chips. I love like hash browns or like roasted potatoes because they keep me fuller longer and it's a little bit more of like a salty satisfaction. So like even though I'm low on calories, it is still feeding like my craving that I do. Like I'll tear up some fries. Like my favorite food is cheese fries. So when I get that those potatoes, I get that satisfaction that I want from my favorite food without having to go eat some cheese fries because I'm cutting. Then I just usually kind of do whatever vegetables. Brussels sprouts are super high in protein, so I usually lean towards those. Peas, I do like asparagus because it naturally like flushes you out and helps get rid of any excess water weight. For some reason, the word for that is escaping me right now, even though I know what that word is. And as soon as I'm done this sentence, it's gonna hit me.
Diuretic?
Yes, diuretic. So yeah, asparagus is a natural diuretic. So I do lean towards that for that benefit. And then for dinner, I honestly usually meal like eat the same thing that I ate for lunch because I know it's going to get me towards my goals. Even though I talk about how I don't have physical goals, I know it works for me. I am a very like busy person, which is why I tend to eat the same things over and over again. And then again, I am limited being vegetarian. I am a little bit limited. So I meal prep at the beginning of the week and I just eat it throughout the week. I don't mind eating the same thing for lunch and dinner because that's what tastes good to me. So my nutrition is honestly a little bit boring. Sorry, guys, if you were hoping for something more exciting.
I would, and if that's what works for Laura, that's what works for Laura. Now, I'm gonna say this again, and this is where Laura and I do have different. We have talked about this, how we are different people. We have different styles, not only of training, not only of coaching, but apparently of eating as well. Because I could not sustain Laura's meal plan. I, for one, like meat, so that's one. But beyond that, I am not someone who can eat the same thing day after day after day. Maybe for 1 or 2 days or 2 or 3 days in a row. And I have done that because I do some meal prep because I am very busy. I am, we both personal training guys. Just in case anyone out there is listening and thinking about getting into this, it can be a grind. It is a fun, it is a rewarding grind, but it can be a grind. So that's my little bit of a disclaimer. So
Yeah,
meal prep does
emphasis
become
on that.
important. Um, but so meal prep is important. I usually do have some chicken. Meal prepped once a week. I also usually will make one meal in the crock pot, but breakfast for me usually is either oatmeal or Kodiak toast or waffles. Oatmeal usually has almond milk, some sort of fruit, sometimes bananas, sometimes blueberries, sometimes peaches right now because peaches are in season and I love me some peaches. Some sort of a sugar substitute. Those days can be are different styles depending on my mood, depending on how much time I have too, sometimes in the morning. Um, in a pinch, on days where I have multiple days where I know I have to get up early and be at the gym at 5 or 6 a.m., I will meal prep a casserole, where I'll take some eggs and egg whites and put it in a Pyrex dish with some vegetables and usually some turkey sausage or some other type of meat, to put in there. And I will bake that and cut it into squares. I'll put some hot sauce and then I'll make my oatmeal in a cup, in a small shaker bottle. So I'll have that ready. And then I heat it up in the microwave when I get to work. Usually I have a protein shake, which is one scoop of protein in water, with a scoop of collagen, about mid-morning. I work out mid-afternoons most days, so I usually have a snack pre-workout. So usually around somewhere between 12 and 1 o'clock, I have a snack, which usually consists of a protein, and a piece of fruit. The reason I like the piece of fruit is because I like to have that little extra carb boost, that little extra sugar boost right before I go and I start my training, especially when I'm doing something more high intensity than just lifting weights. When I'm doing a conditioning block, or I am in a high rep, high intensity, high pace training block. After I'm done, I will have another protein shake. This one will be a scoop of whey protein with a scoop of uh, fast digesting carb, um, which and water, which usually, by the way, just in case if you're ever trying to recover, is a great recovery tool that someone turned me on to. However, this is going to be the next thing. I have my lunch prepped. My lunch consists of a carbohydrate, a vegetable, and a protein. Once you drink that whey protein shake with that fast digesting carb, you better have that lunch ready for you within 30 to 40 minutes because it will, if not, you will become one hangry bitch. Trust me on that. I have my lunch usually by where most people have dinner time, and this is something else I wanted to talk about too. Where most people have dinner time, I'm having a third protein shake for the day, which is just one scoop of protein in water. And then finally, at the end of the day, and I'm going to admit, I eat dinner fairly late most as we're recording this, it's almost 8 o'clock, and I haven't eaten dinner yet.
Yeah, me either.
Okay. So that brings me to a point that I'm gonna throw this in there here, Laura. So this is kind of not really on our notes, but there is no magic time to stop eating. Some people say
Preach.
6, some people say 7, and I just like let me ask you this. What time do you go to bed? Now, I'm not suggesting eat a whole dinner and then go right to bed. First of all, you're not going to sleep well. Secondly, yeah, that's kind of not the point. However, if you're not going to bed till midnight and you eat at 9 o'clock, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're not going to bed till 1 in the morning and you're eating at 10, as long as you're getting your 8 hours of sleep, which we talked about a little bit on the last show, depending on whatever your schedule, what about people that work overnight? They eat after 8 o'clock at night because you most times they're eating dinner at 1, 2 in the morning, and what they're considering dinner is what we're when we're having breakfast. So there is no magic time to stop eating, other than I usually recommend 2.5 to 3 hours before you go to bed. Um,
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
but if I went through my now again, that's the meal plan that works for me, and depending on where I'm at in my training and whether or not I have a competition coming up, I do make adjustments to my calories and how many protein shakes I have and say, but on a normal everyday, that is what I eat. Now, do I recommend that for my clients, especially my beginners? Absolutely not, because that is a shit ton of food. You don't want it. This is what I do. That's what works for me. Just like Laura with eating lentils and tofu and things like that. I couldn't do that because again, what I said before about personal taste, and this is where I wanted to get into this is is personal taste comes into it. I don't like tofu. I don't like lentils. That wouldn't work for me. Laura, do you like spicy food?
Oh, I tear up some spicy food.
Okay, good. Yeah, me too. But there are a lot of people that don't, and spicy food actually can give you a small boost in metabolism. Capsaicin can give you a small boost in metabolism. Cinnamon can help with insulin resistance. Is it going to give you a six-pack abs? No, it's not. But those little things can add up. Only though if you like those things. If you don't like cinnamon, if you don't like spicy food, if spicy food causes you more stomach distress than it does benefit, it's not going to benefit you to force yourself to eat spicy food because it's going to impact you in the long run and make you fall off. Just like if I had to eat tofu, I'm not sure I could do this. No offense, Laura.
Oh, that's
And
okay.
that's
If
where
I
one of
was
the things.
same thing reverse.
What's that?
Same thing reverse. If I had to eat meat,
Right,
I would like not.
right. There is something for everybody. And one of the things that I have talked about, and Laura, if you look at, and Laura's posted these, and we'll post some more on our social media on our Instagram and our Facebook. One of the things that I really like to do is I like to find healthier versions of the things that I like. I like tacos. I've talked about this. I like tacos. I like cheeseburgers. I like pizza. I do like McDonald's. My parents did take me, and again, this goes back to what Barbara said in the beer about the filling your social cup. That was a big family thing for me when I was a kid. So, and I still do take my kids to McDonald's here and there. Um, I'm also divorced. I don't have my kids every day. So when I have them once a week, I usually try to have them some type of a cheat meal with my kids one time when I have them because it is a social thing for me. My family is also Italian. So again, we say I love you with spaghetti. Um, these little things are things that are important to me. So I find a way to get them into my meal plan. There's a healthy way to make breakfast sandwiches. There's a healthy way to have pasta. Pasta is should be on most people's meal plans because it is good. It is maybe not necessarily white pasta, but whole wheat pastas, protein pastas now that they make now. There's always something for everyone, and it can be meal prep. And I know Laura is a big meal prepper.
Yes, I love to meal prep. Before I get into meal prep, so I do want to touch on something that Dave said when he talked about his first protein shake, how he adds collagen in the protein shake. Fun fact, in case you're like, I wonder why he puts collagen in your protein shake. I don't know if this is why Dave does it, but collagen helps with your protein absorption. So it helps your body absorb more protein. So I usually, like we talked about the last episode, creatine is like the supplement I usually recommend. I do also recommend collagen because it's an overall beneficial supplement. So I love that I was so happy when you said you put collagen in your protein shake.
Actually, it helped for me. I didn't know. I honestly did not know that. I do it for skin benefits and for joint benefits for me.
Yeah, see, it benefits. I love collagen. It's a whole, just like
Collagen.
creatine.
I feel like we could do actually a whole show and maybe we'll do one probably in the next couple weeks, but a whole show on different supplements that we use because I feel like a lot of times when people think of supplements, they think of again, we go back to that bodybuilder meathead kind of mentality, and really there's a lot of health benefits. And because again, we've talked about this for Blue in the Face and Lars. Like I think I've mentioned this before. Yeah, we mentioned this pretty much every show. We are not here necessarily to be bodybuilders or swimsuit models or athletes or super skinny or whatever it is. We're here to improve our quality and longevity of our life. And supplementation at some point, if you're trying to do that, definitely should be something into that. Sorry to go
Oh
off on a
yeah.
tangent there.
Oh no, you're good. I started it. It's okay. But yeah, we're gonna get back to meal prep. Back to meal prepping. So I was telling Dave this when we were like planning this episode. So this goes back to like the obsessive tendencies that I have with my fitness journey. I get like weirdly competitive with myself, with my meal preps. Like I'm like, I want to meal prep as much as I can in 1 hour, or like I want to do as many foods as many combinations as I can with chicken, rice, and broccoli. Like I want to meal prep these things, and then I'm gonna vary them as I eat. I'm gonna add it in. So it is a little bizarre that I do that, but that's probably why I ended up becoming a personal trainer. It was like in the alignment of my interests, I guess. But so how I like to meal prep is I start with the thing that's going to take the longest first. My meal prep is very hectic. So I'm not just like casually meal prepping throughout the day on a Sunday and whatever, and I'm going to take a couple hours. No, I am getting shit done. I start with whatever's going to take the longest. So if I'm cooking tofu, usually that ends up being the longest thing, takes about an hour. If I'm boiling pasta, that may be the next most time consuming thing. So I'll cut up my tofu, throw it in the oven, then I start boiling water for my pasta. After my water is starting to boil, then I'm going to move on to the next thing. Maybe that's cutting up my vegetables so I can stick them in the oven with my tofu, because vegetables take longer to cook than my tofu. So I am always doing like a million things at one time because I don't want to spend all day meal prepping. I want to get as many combinations of food that I can in the least amount of time. Don't be afraid to utilize like our quick things. So like minute rice or frozen vegetables. You can cook both of those things in probably less than 10 minutes. Do all of that. Um, Sometimes I will like stick stuff in the crock pot. I'm gonna go take a step back for a second and then come back. You also don't have to meal prep. There are plenty of things that you can get from the grocery store that are like ready made. A lot of times I recommend rotisserie chickens for my clients, and I know Dave and I talked about this when we were planning this episode too. You don't have to only stick to chicken breasts. So I tell my clients to get a rotisserie chicken. The flavor that you gain from those chicken thighs in the ratio to the couple extra calories that you get, if you're going to enjoy your food 10 times more, because I told you you could eat chicken thighs instead of chicken breasts, I would rather you eat chicken thighs and enjoy your food. So sometimes you will see like people are like, I only eat chicken breast because it's leaner and whatever. It's really not that different, and it tastes a lot better. So you can find things like frozen vegetables, minute rice, you can find cans of beans, you can find very quick meals at the grocery store. Lettuce is a super easy vegetable, just throw some stuff on top of it. Um, so you don't always have to meal prep, but when you are meal prepping, try to do as much as you can in the least amount of time. And also, I like to prep more bland things, like how I said chicken, rice, and broccoli. You can do a ton of different things with chicken, rice, and broccoli. Broccoli's not the best vegetable to use for this example, but I can think of two off the top of my head. I could do like a peanut sauce with tofu, rice, and broccoli. I could do a stir fry soy sauce with plain rice, plain tofu, plain broccoli. If I meal prep some chicken, like my husband's gonna throw some chicken in the crock pot tonight, and I was talking about while we were working out, he was talking about what he was gonna do with it. He's gonna prep plain chicken so that maybe one day he's gonna put barbecue sauce on it. Maybe the next day he'll put buffalo sauce on it. Maybe the day after that he'll put ranch on it. Like you can prep basic foods and then change up the meal that you're having with your toppings. So you could do like a taco bowl. You could do actual tacos. You could do spaghetti. You can do pulled chicken on a lettuce wrap or whatever. So plain meals and then adjust with your toppings. Another thing that a lot of my clients struggle with is like, well, I want to eat healthy, but my husband doesn't, or like my husband gets mad when I cook healthy food, or the other way around, not to be like sexist or whatever. So your family or your kids or your spouse or whoever may not want to eat healthy just because you do. So what I do, this is a little bit of a different application on how I modify this. Like my husband eats meat, but I don't. So I use this because we have different like values, not because he doesn't want to eat healthy and I do. I will take a basic meal and modify something so simple that it doesn't take me extra time to cook, but everybody gets what they want. So like a common thing I'll use is like a burrito bowl or a taco bowl or pasta night or meatballs. You can adjust your toppings. Like maybe your husband or your spouse wants to use sour cream, but you want to eat healthier, so you're going to use plain Greek yogurt. Maybe somebody wants to use a tortilla, but you have certain macros that you want to hit and you don't have any carbs left for the day. You can throw it on a lettuce wrap. You can make a salad out of it. So stick to the more like toppings, I would say, not generally, but like the more topping related meals that you make, the easier it is to adjust and everybody can kind of get what they want. That does require a little bit more cleanup, so just a heads up on that one. But like sometimes my clients will be like, "Oh, my husband only wants to make like spaghetti and meatballs, and that's all he wants to eat." That's okay. You're gonna focus on the meatballs, a little bit less on the spaghetti. Throw a microwaved vegetable in there, you're good to go. Maybe your husband wants to focus more on the spaghetti and he doesn't necessarily care about the meatballs. You can adjust your meal to your goals, even if your family members don't want to participate in healthy nutrition either. So don't let that be your limiting factor. You just kind of have to think outside the box a little bit on that one.
Absolutely. And I feel like a lot of times too, you can, and because I am now everyone in my household for the most part will go along with most of the stuff that I eat. Sometimes the spicy doesn't go. But one of the things that is a thing for me is I generally don't eat because I do eat so late, and I at one point had a lot of trouble sleeping. I don't eat a whole lot of carbohydrates at night. So my dinner is usually protein and vegetables. Going back to the example that you just gave, tacos, I might eat one taco on a low carb shell that's got like a 4 or 5 net carb taco shell. And the rest of it is going to be put either on a lettuce wrap or on just a pile of meat with some salt, with some salsa and reduced fat cheese. But then I'll turn around and for lunch, I'll put that same leftover taco meat over some rice and or beans and have, like you said, a taco ball. I'll put some salsa, I'll put some jalapenos, I'll put some probably some more reduced fat cheese, hot sauce, because again, spicy food. And then throw some extra vegetables on the side, and voila, taco bowl. So you can do a lot. There's a lot more with nutrition that you can do if you put a little bit of effort and a little bit of imagination. Regardless of how you do it, the biggest thing for me, and one of the things that I feel like I didn't hit on when I was as I was going over my current nutrition protocol, is that I am a very big, very, very big on not skipping meals.
Same.
Not everyone agrees with me on this. And I know I am in the minority. When I get up, I within a half an hour I want to eat breakfast from the time I get out of bed. I realize I'm in the
Yeah.
minority on that. And some people are like, "Oh, I'm not hungry until 11 o'clock." I've also heard people who say, if you say I'm not hungry till 11 o'clock, part of that is because you've trained your body to be that way. Because I used to be like that. Secondly, everyone's, "Oh, if I eat at 8 or 9 or 7 or whenever I get up, I'm hungry again at 11." Again, that's kind of the point. I like to think of, when it comes to nutrition, I like to think of my metabolism as a fire. If for those of you, and I'm not a camper, but if you think of your metabolism as a campfire, you start by rubbing two sticks together. You get a little fire. If you take a 10-pound log and put it on that little fire, it's gonna, if it doesn't put it out, it's at the very least gonna slow it down. If we keep putting a little bit more wood and a little bit more wood and a little bit more wood on that fire, it's gonna grow and grow and grow. And that's why I eat the way I do, where I have my breakfast, I have a shake, I have a snack, I have another shake, I have lunch, I have another shake, I have dinner. I'm eating about every 2.5 to 3 hours. The other thing that someone told me this recently, and I don't know if you listen or not, but shout out to you, Meg. She's one of the independent trainers I work with at Gold. Um, think of a baby, Laura. You're probably a little less removed from this stage than I am, but when your son was little, when he was first born, how often did he wake up to feed? Was that what, 2, 3 hours?
Oh my God, that's like PTSD, like two
Oh, sorry.
hours.
Right.
You're
But
triggering
that's
me.
what sorry. I won't tell you that mine slept through the night at 2 months old. Um,
Oh my God,
but
I hate you.
Um, but they ate every 2.5 to 3 hours, even waking up to eat. We somewhere along the line we get busy, we stop doing it, and usually it's right. And if you think about it, it's right around school age is when we stop, when we have to stop and focus on other things. More recent years, since at least I was out of school, I'm pretty sure since you were out of school too, they have started giving kids a snack about mid-morning. Because I know both of my children, when they started going to school, they were like, "Oh, pack in a snack," and I'm like, "What? A what? A what? No, we didn't get a
Oh
snack."
yeah, I didn't get snacks. Me
You're
either.
right. Okay, good. Okay, I was gonna say I don't think that was a thing even when you, but that was that's one of those things that I think that if we keep that metabolism burning, and I know some people are saying, oh, fasting, intermittent fasting works for me, or eating between a certain window. And again, if you're getting your calorie at the end of the day, when it comes to losing weight specifically, calories in, calories out. However, if we're trying to improve our health and fitness, if we're trying to improve our metabolism, if we're trying to set ourselves up for success in the future, I think that's where that style of eating where you're eating every 2.5 to 3 hours and keeping that fire burning is going to help most people. All right, so that is all we have today about nutrition. I'm sure we will dive further into this in the future. Um, but join us next time. We will be talking about goal setting because I know we've talked about training for your goals, eating for your goals, all those things. And now we're going to talk about how to identify our goals. So join us next week on the She Lifts, He Lifts podcast. I'm Coach Dave. Check me out, Rockstar Fitness on Facebook, the Webster023 on Instagram.
And I'm Laura. Don't forget, you can do hard things. Check me. You can follow me on
And
Instagram and TikTok at Laura Ash underscore CPT and Laura Ash personal trainer on Facebook.
until next week, ladies and gentlemen.